First, all right, I'm going to take off my coat, that's okay. And I'm going to walk forward because I like to be in the mix. My name is Mike Peterson. I have 17 years of law enforcement, all of Columbia City. Prior to that, I was military, Air Force and Army. I spent some time working at, well, they call it Allen County Juvenile Center. It used to be Wood Youth Center back in the day. Much better facility nowadays, much better facilities. I'm going to start out talking about a real quick story about an accidental discharge happened to my roommate down at the police academy. Any of you that are familiar with a Glock, in order to take the top of the Glock off, you have to depress the trigger, correct? My roommate comes up, we're in the academy, we're in like the 12th week, so we're getting towards the end. And he's kind of red-faced, he's kind of tearing up, so even police officers make mistakes, is what I'm trying to say here. And he comes in and he says, hey, I'm leaving. I just shot my wall locker. What he was doing is he was taking off his slide and discharged around in the wall locker inside the academy. And I thought he was kidding, and I asked him if I could have his closet space because it was much more than mine. Yeah, I know. I'm super insensitive, right? I'm like, you don't mind, do you? He's like, I'm serious. They let him come back later, but he had to leave that session. So, you know, you guys, some of you have probably forgotten more about firearms than I know, but I think Bob's right. Just make sure that we keep them holstered while we're here. Carry them, absolutely, I'm all for that. Let's just be careful with them. 17 years of law enforcement. I have 2 years as a captain. I had 8 years. I just finished up as a chief. My friend Tim Longbaugh is now chief. I have 3 more years till I retire. So I'm going to go to the street, take it easy. I'm currently on a SWAT team. I am a sniper. I'm not steely-eyed scuba killer or anything like that, guys. Actually, the best component of a sniper is a thinker. Those make the best snipers. They'll teach you how to shoot, and you'll shoot well. We go through a lot of advanced training. But really where it comes from is, and when we're talking about how we handle firearms, it's being a thinker. And I'm sure that prosecutor, defense attorney, you guys can appreciate that. It's whether to take that shot or not take that shot is the most important. And my last thing is for the past couple of years, been teaching at Indiana Tech. It's also my alma mater. I teach criminal justice and business up there. I'm kind of a weird cop. I have an MBA, not a criminal justice degree, and so they use that. And I look forward to your questions.
Mediocre but arrogant.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is.
I have one too.
You can take a big chair.
Well, I'm Jim Toms, state senator from Evansville, District 49, and my wife Margie's back here with me, and I want to thank Bob and all of you for inviting us up here today. We really enjoyed it. And it is, people say how far? 3 days, drive it straight through, I guess. But we're talking about gun safety and gun recklessness, things like that. I got a little joke for you. We'll start off with a joke, okay? Everybody for this? This prospector, been up in the mountains prospecting for gold for 20 years or so. And he got curious wondering what city life he'd come to. So he packed up his mule and he headed back in town. And the first thing he came up on was a young cowboy with a 6-shooter in one hand and a bottle of whiskey in the other hand. Bad combination. And he's shooting, blazing away, having fun. He spots this old timer and he yells at him. He says, "Hey, old man," he says, "can you dance?" The prospector says, "No, son, never took a step in my life." Well, the kid fires around at his feet and the old man jumps and dodges a bullet. He says, "Well, I thought you said you couldn't dance." So he starts shooting. The guy's hopping around, dodging bullets. The crowd gathers around and they start laughing. Finally, he runs out of ammo. And the people's all laughing, so the old timer figures he's going to have to save face, so he draws a double-barrel shotgun on his pack mule, and he lowers it down on his kid. He said, "I'm going to ask you a question, boy." He said, "You ever kiss a mule hind end?" The kid said, "No, but I'd sure like to." You can't get yourself in trouble. I'll just tell you a little bit about me. I born and raised in Indiana, in the Evansville area, and I served in the military for 3 years, a year in Vietnam with the 101st Airborne. And my wife and I raised 3 kids. They're all full grown. Made us real proud of them, what they've accomplished. Our oldest daughter's married and got a college education. They've got 3 babies now, grandbabies. And our second oldest daughter, she went into the military. And she served for about 8 years, made staff sergeant, was going to be a career soldier, but she suffered a severe injury, and it resulted in her getting a medical discharge. It really killed her soul because she was going to make a career out of it. But she overcome that, And she wound up becoming an Indiana State Trooper, and she was a trooper up until for 5 years, up until about 2 months ago, and she resigned, and she's now in Quantico taking training to be a drug enforcement agent. So, and her son, he got out of high school, he went in the Marines. He was in the Marines for 4 years, made sergeant, come out of the Marines, got his master's degree, and he's now a first lieutenant in the National Guard, and he's been in Intel since he went into the service. So our kids have all done well, and we're proud of them. And for me, when I got out of the service, went back to work, I thought that, I was doing my duty. I'd vote, join the NRA, and life was good. I just wanted to be left alone. And I got to tell you, when Bill Clinton became president, and he started on gun control, that sent up a flag for me. And I thought, we're going the wrong direction here. I'm with anybody on crime control, but gun control, I'll have no part of it, because it only affects good people. That's all gun control is about. And so a few of us down there in our area got together one Sunday morning. It was in January of 1999 at a local gun shop. About 8 of us. We was growling about what was going on, wanted to do something. We didn't know what, but we was going to do something. And that morning, one of the guys suggested that we ought to get in one of the parades and put a float in our local parade down there. And I thought, well, where's this going to go? And they all thought it was a great idea. So I said, all right, well, I'll get us a entry form, and we'll do that. Now, at that time in 1999, if you guys recall, every night on the news there was a story about a shooting, more gun control. The media was fueling the flames on this thing. There was lawsuits against gun manufacturers, ammo makers. Remember the Winchester Black Talon bullet? They zeroed in on that, how bad of a bullet was, a cop-killer bullet. I thought, man, how would anybody think that an executive board of a firearm manufacturer would sit down and design a bullet for cops, to kill cops with? That's ludicrous to think that. But the media was pumping this up, and they was getting a lot of support with it, with this gun control. And then we had the school shootings going on. And so anyway, with all of the bad publicity that was on every night, and the image of a reporter telling us about another shooting and the backdrop of an AK-47, I mean, it was just bad for gun owners. You guys remember all that, don't you? Every night, it wouldn't let up. No room to breathe on this. So anyway, we put a float together. I had a little homemade trailer. And in Evansville, twice a year, they have 2 major parades. And the one in the spring of the year it was called the Freedom Festival Parade. So we thought, well, this would be a time to do it. And so we got this thing all dolled up with banners, red, white, and blue, and all this on it. And we got the wives and the kids. We was all ready to go. The NRA gave us some banners to put on. We made some of our own posters, And it was a little cloudy that day, a little overcast. There was a thunderclap or two, and they canceled the parade. Now, this is the biggest parade in Evansville, and they canceled it because of impending weather. And here we were all ready to go. So we thought, the heck with it. We're going to go ahead and do the parade anyway. So we hitched behind a nice bright red Chevy truck, and we went down this parade route. Now, there was people up and down the sidewalks. They didn't know the parade was canceled. And they looked down the street with one lone single float. And the biggest parade in Evansville. That was it. Just us. And they were screaming and thumbs up, and it just, people was all pumped up, and gun owners and stuff like that, and it was really a nice experience for us. And it was an opportunity for people to see what gun owners look like. They weren't the camouflage running through the wood kind of group. It was families, it was kids, their wives, and the dads, and we had flags on there and everything like that. It went real well. In fact, the NRA did a feature story in September issue of the 1999 September issue of the American Rifleman and American Hunter, had a photograph of our little float and did a story. I thought it was kind of neat, somebody doing something like this. But this is what started our group. I kind of thought, well, we did something, we made some noise, we kind of rocked the boat a little bit. But these guys want to keep this thing going, and so we started having meetings occasionally. We started gathering more people was coming on board with us, and we started having more regular meetings. Finally got it down to where we had a monthly meeting, which we have now. It's the last Saturday of every month. And we were holding these meetings at a fire station there in Evansville, a volunteer fire station, for many, many years, up until about 4 years ago, because we finally outgrew it. And now we have it at our local gun range. We've got a nice facility like this one here. It's a little bit larger, but they let us have our meetings in. But we've had over the years, Becky Skillman, Lieutenant Governor, has visited with us. We've had, I think, people run for every office that you can imagine at our meetings one time or another. And it's become a point, if you're running for office, this is one group that you have to meet. We've received a national award from the NRA in 2000 for the Grassroots Organization of the Year. And our group was the one that was involved in getting the lifetime handgun license passed. And that was a group down there. Yeah, I was working with Senator Johnny Nugent at the time on that. And I know I'm going probably long here, but I'll cut off. But anyway, I'm just leading up to, this is what got us involved in becoming active and political. And I'll talk a little bit later on this, but ultimately, I wound up running for office myself as a result of all this and became a state senator 2 years ago. So that's where I'm at right now. So thanks. I'll get more on this later on, okay?
That's fine. No problem.
Okay.
Sadly, I'm not funny, so.
I heard that.
It's terrible.
You redeem yourself.
My dad is standing in the back. He follows me around. I don't know if you want to listen to me today or not. My office, I work a lot because anything that involves guns, I'll volunteer my time to do, because my theory is, and it bears out, I think we've all said it in different ways, most bad gun laws, not all of them, but most of them are a knee-jerk reaction to somebody that had a gun that probably lawfully had it and did something stupid. So that's not the group here. You wouldn't be here, but you all know who I'm talking about. I see them in Marion County trying to get the handgun license application done. I know damn well they don't know which end of the gun goes down range, and they sure don't know how to shoot it and operate it correctly, but that's a different story for a different day. Here's a little bit about me. Oh, back up. While you might want to take a question, make sure you listen to what I say, or maybe don't listen to it. My office is in the process of converting from complete paper to complete electronics, so we have two different calendars running, and as anal as I am, somehow or another I screwed this date up. So last Saturday, if you stood out here at 8:45, you'd see me jumping around. I promise, on the whole, I'm smarter than that.
You didn't have the nerve to tell me, huh?
Wow, no. I'm like, wow, this could be a low attendance, or are we in different time zone over here? In Indy, we've never changed.
Confession is good for the soul, but it's bad for the reputation.
Man, I am so anal, and I'm also this couple on top of this. June 1, I have a national version of my Indiana book coming out, because I get what started. I said I would never do it because it's so difficult to do, but the law enforcement are in the same boat that we all are. If you're carrying in a reciprocal state, they can carry off duty if they're qualified and meet the criteria under HR 218, which is the Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act of 2004. So writing that kind of book has just about killed me. I spent 10 days hiding in a hotel between Christmas and New Year's working on it, and it's going to come out June 1st, or I'm going to be dead, one of the two, and it's 70-30 right now which way it's going to be. A comment that I heard up here, and I'll give you some of my background in a second, is the most important thing if you take away today, as far as I'm concerned about this. If you take a good prosecutor, a good defense attorney, a good legislator, we're all going to tell you the same thing, which is the most important weapon is what sits on your shoulders, and this is a thinking person's game, and the fact that you're here indicates you're not the group that are not going to think about it. But I have a guy that to this day still begrudges me, and I got him, frankly, a miracle. He's sitting just to talk about it. It's a thinking person's game. He's got his license, had a license for a long time, has a gun. If you have a cheap gun, don't take this personally, but he has a really cheap gun, less than $100. He's sitting at a stoplight. The guy behind him bumps him, but the guy behind him also happens to be a lifetime suspended driver. So he takes off because he knows he's going to jail if the police show up. So the guy at the stoplight thinks, maybe there's damage to my car. He takes off chasing him. This is 4 o'clock, 4 or 5 o'clock, whatever time kids get home from the bus. This guy takes off through an addition, so they're in a high-speed chase down the addition, and this guy has his $99 gun out the window shooting. I'm not making this up. Shooting at the car in front of him. Finally, on about the 6th or 7th round, the gun actually has a mechanical failure and fails. But one of the shots actually hit his own mirror on the outside of his car. So he gets charged with felony criminal recklessness and comes to me, and he really doesn't get it. He said, this guy hit my car. I'm like, there's no right to use deadly force for a property crime because somebody bumps your car. And so, I'm trying to be tactful about it. I'm like, this is exactly why we have bad gun laws. Fast forward. Then I get to talking with the prosecutor. I'm like, this guy really didn't get it. And then I hear the 911 call. So you get all the parents of these kids getting off the bus talking about, there's some crazy son of a bitch driving down the road shooting at the car in front of him. I'm like, dude, that's just hardly defensible. So you wind up getting AMS, which means in Indiana, it's a weird, quirky thing, which we'll hear some more about. Once in your life, you can actually commit a felony and have it turned by magic into a misdemeanor as if it never existed. So we got a misdemeanor instead of a felony. And then after all that's said and done, he's angry at me, and then he wants me to take the time to go and get the gun back out of the police impound. I'm like, dude, you are on your own. It's $99. I want to say, if you want here it is. Here's $99. But your brain's the most important thing. Here's a little bit about me. I tried to write it out on paper because and Jim Tom's actually heard this. The legislature, I don't know if they got it or not. I was there when he was working on Senate Bill 292, and I'm like, I'm an academic trapped in a lawyer's body that's not politically correct, so I don't fit anywhere. My background, though, really makes me good at this, I think. I was basically, today, and why I'm here is, I was in Boy Scouts, and that changed, and is who I am today. My default is I was an Eagle Scout, and you be prepared, and you work every permutation of every problem until you either get what you want or you run out of options. It's just good problem solving skills. But I grew up in Boy Scout shooting. I was always the one that got all the awards at the summer camp because I stayed there long enough until I, just by pure probability, could get the target that would win the NRA contest. And then I grew up out in the country, so it wasn't uncommon. I don't know what the law was at that particular time. We all walked down the road. I'm probably 16 or so. We carried our 22s down the road and shot at things, but we were never unsafe. And I had to, I don't know if it's genetic, the way I was raised, or a combination of all those, but I always had the awe and respect for the power and authority of a gun. I mean, it can take or end a life. Didn't do a lot with hunting because you have to get up early to hunt. I'm like, I'd rather just go to the store and buy it, but I'm not anti-hunting. It's just, I'm not much on a real early morning thing. In law school, fast forward then, I still was a shooter. A few of us got together and I would shoot during law school. We'd go to target practice as a way to get away. So it was a logical progression. My first job happened to be Lance Hamner. If you don't know him, he was the elected prosecutor of Johnson County for years. When he was walking door to door to try to unseat the elected prosecutor before him, he met my parents and said the Eagle Scout combination came up, so I called him up after law school and he's like, sure, come down and work for me. So I wound up doing a lot of the gun crime memorandums for the prosecutors when I'm still in law school because I could dig through it and I liked the topic, and if they wanted a 2-sentence thing, I'd give them a 20-page brief, and they loved it. We had a snow day, and it's kind of like the canceling the parade in Evansville. The county commissioners, I think because we had a really bad snowstorm the year before and kids got stuck in buses, a little bit of snow, and they closed it. So the prosecutor's office was like, we're not going home. So we got on the topic of guns. I'd just been there maybe two months. Lance Hamner's the elected prosecutor, so we decided, why don't we all go to the car and get our guns and we'll see what we all carry? So that, I don't know if that still happens or not. We had show and tell at the
Just what I was talking about.
Now, I will tell you, we were all safe with them. We didn't have them, we brought them. I'm like, I carry a H&K P7 M13, and Lance is like, I carry a Glock, and it was an interesting day, nonetheless. So that's I mentioned that only not from the safety issue because we were safe, but I mentioned that because I've been on sadly, every kind of angle you can think of, from products liability to representing manufacturer to the prosecution side of guns to the defense side of guns. And now what I do is more on a national level. Big law firms will have gun questions, or they'll have a client that has a gun shop or some gun problem. And the technical side of guns, if you want a question that has a perfect answer, it takes hours to figure it out. You have to look at state law, you have to look at the administrative code, you have to look at the federal law, you have to look at the federal codes that interpret the laws, and it takes forever. But maybe think of something else, you'll appreciate this. I was at the SHOT Show, and I have all these oddball questions too, because again, I don't fit anywhere. So one of the presentations, I'm with a guy that I like a lot, and I'm like, let's go up and watch the ATF presentation. So it's general counsel or somebody for ATF that really is a high level player. So at the end, he's like, you anybody have any questions? So I'm like, well, hell, I got all kinds of questions. My guy's like, no, he didn't mean that. He's like, no, they don't mean that. I'm like, what questions? And he's like, they got facial recognition software. And he turns his name tag over. Slides 2 seats down, but because she had to have a ticket for that, he didn't realize I have his wife's name tag on. So I talked to him yesterday, and he's like, next year when we go, I'm going to ask a question about you, and I've got 7 months to think about that question. I'm going to ask ATF about you next year at SHOT Show. After law school, it was a natural progression because of working in the prosecutor's office. When other attorneys had gun questions, they called me, and I started realizing how little I knew about gun law, and it kind of bugged me. Fast forward a couple years later, it's about 20 years ago now, my friend's parents were both tragically killed in a car accident in Florida, so I flew down there with him because his wife's parents were the ones that were killed. And in the downtime, and I'd say there's something good that came from this, in the downtime, we have nowhere to go, so we go to the gun shops. And pretty much go to all of them in Florida because we're there for a week. And in one of the Florida stores, there's a Florida attorney that's written a book on Florida gun law that was used by the police academy. And I'm like, you know what, we ought to do one of those in Indiana. So I bought one, took it home, thought about it. And then just one kind of day, I told my business partner, I think I'm going to write a book on Indiana gun law. And she supported me through all the crazy things I've done, like going to shooting school. I have to take a week off from the work this week as I'm going to Pat Rogers' MUSOC shooting school. She's like, okay, whatever, but you're going to write a book on this? So I started out, and I couldn't even find the gun law. Really, on this, you can find deadly force, but all the technical side. And then the more you find, the more you realize how much you don't know. And it's started taking on its own life about 15 years ago, where I started assembling the gun law questions, started writing the book, and then all kinds of things came from that, almost to the point now that I never have time to shoot, which is the ironic part. I did all that so I could go run around and shoot, and it's turned out that it's taken so much of my time. Every free moment now is doing something with the gun book or gun law or otherwise. I'm now general counsel for the Indy 1500 Gun and Knife Show, which is probably the largest east of the Mississippi, and do a lot in that level as well. From not only from the prosecution side, from the defense side, I get if I don't get the cases, I consult with a lot of the attorneys in some of the cases that are the magic bullet cases. And what we heard about around going through a wall, take that seriously, because it's amazing what a bullet will do. And I wasn't old enough to remember Kennedy and the whole magic bullet quandary, but I actually had another attorney in a 45, a big, heavy, slow round. I couldn't make line of sight in the winter with no trees, and this bullet was the magic shot, one errant round that traveled almost a half a mile and killed somebody half a mile away. And that case just resolved. And if you want to know how they resolve, this is one where the guy goes out in the backyard, is working on a gun, and the gun actually winds up going full auto. One round gets away out of the backstop. It travels half a mile and killed somebody in their sleep on the other side of their bed. And I would have bet my life it wasn't that bullet until I saw the autopsy photos. And it's a perfect 230 grain 45 hollow point ball standing up and down inside the spinal cord on a vertical orientation. So that case, if you want to know what ultimately happens, if that's you, I can tell you because it's settled now. He wound up with a D felony and a couple years of incarceration. or home detention. He will actually get AMS when it's over with, so he'll have a misdemeanor, and the actual value of the human life, it's settled for $470,000. So that's the end of a case, what it's worth. When and if you ever look at anything I write or read, that's not my personal view. Everything I write is apolitical because I don't want to get pigeonholed on one side or the other, because what I can do to help gun owners is help you find the law. And if that seems like something I'm overstating, I've spent between 3 books just in Indiana trying to explain it myself, over 10,000 hours of my time just trying to understand Indiana law. And if I put a political slant to it, then all of the use it can get for you, either A, following it, or B, if you don't like it, change it, I lose my credibility because of that. So my books are apolitical. How my mom read it and said, I don't agree with that at all, I wouldn't do that. I'm like, well, that's the point. It's what the law is to a statistical certainty, but at least you know so you don't violate it yourself. That's sort of a rough background of me, I guess. And we'll turn it over to the next person.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm done. How do I follow these three guys? Native of Fort Wayne, born and raised there. Went away to law school down in Bloomington, Indiana. Came back with my law degree, was in private practice a couple of months when I got a phone call from the local prosecutor's office in Allen County. Said, hey, come on board. I'd done a little internship there, so I started there and slowly worked my way up the ladder. Prior to that, I had no gun experience. I'm a city boy. My dad was a minister. We didn't have any guns in the house. We didn't hunt. I wasn't in the military. So now I become a deputy prosecuting attorney, and there are gun cases and people shooting each other or at things or whatever. What the hell are these things? Almost. It was almost that bad. Some of you may know or may have known Len Saminsky, and he was giving a gun class at the time regularly. So several of us deputy prosecutors went and took his gun class and began to become much more familiar with firearms and the safety. And I remember to this day, Len telling us the first day, if you're going to take it out, mean to use it. And if you mean to use it because the guy's coming at you, mean to shut him down. Simple enough, scary as hell for a young deputy prosecutor. So I had to go through that learning process after law school in the prosecutor's office. I got more education through the state police. In those days, the Indiana State Police came and did all the crime scene investigations. Some of you may know Jim Fazio from the state police. He taught me a lot as the firearms examiner and expert. Many, many times I had him on the witness stand asking him questions about how the firearms worked, what sort of ammunition was used, how it would act and such. Just a wonderful education that I was getting on the job. I left the prosecutor's office in the early 90s and went to the U.S. Attorney's Office, became a federal prosecutor. I learned then from ATF, and those agents, worked closely with them. My superiors up in Hammond, up in the region, decided to make me what was then called the trigger lock. You may have had experience with the trigger lock initiative. That was back in the days of Bush and Clinton, and now then other Bush comes in. It was called Safe Streets, I think, or Safe Cities. But I was going around then the Northern District of Indiana above Highway 40, teaching law enforcement and prosecutors about federal gun laws and how they would apply. And there was beginning at that time to be a real movement then for federal prosecutors to start reaching down, literally, that's how they felt about it, reaching down into the local level and taking gun cases that they never would have taken before. A felon in possession of a handgun and prosecuting it at the federal level because they wanted to make an impact on putting people away. Again, however, this was a process that I was learning. It was much more academic to me. Then I met my wife. from Virginia, up in the mountains. I'm a Yankee. She came up here. I don't know why she came up here, but she met this Yankee. And at that point, I started running for political office as the elected prosecutor in Allen County. So my wife began dating a northerner who was a politician and a lawyer. She said, it's time to go down and meet my family. I damn near went and got a gun right then and there. So we go down up into the mountains of Virginia, literally, folks, the mountains of Virginia, a little town called Batesville, about half an hour outside of Charlottesville, Virginia. Beautiful country. And I'm introduced to Uncle Robbie, Uncle Randy, and Speedy. And they were good Southern boys. I thought that I had to prove myself. I had just been elected to public office. They looked at me like this. Okay, boy, what you doing with our niece? I said, well, I'm here just dating her. You know, we hadn't talked marriage yet, get to know the family. And they said, let's go over to Speedy's house. Let's do a little drinking. All right, you know, if I'm going to make this work, if I'm going to make an impression and fit in, I'm going to go to Speedy's house and go drinking. We end up on Speedy's back deck, and it was literally on the side of what I thought was a mountain coming from Fort Wayne. It's probably just a big hill. But the deck came out like this, and it just dropped off. So here we are sitting on this deck, and out comes the tequila. We're going to do shots of tequila, Bob. All right, now my wife-to-be is there with me. She starts drinking shots of tequila. I got to. If this is going to work out, I'm going to propose at some point. So we do some shots of tequila. We're drinking. We're having a good time with Speedy, Randy, and Robbie, and my wife, Linda. Speedy disappears. I figure he's gone into the bathroom. He's gone for a few minutes. Out comes Speedy with a sawed-off shotgun and a big old 45 like nothing I'd ever seen before. He sits him down and he goes, hey, take a look at these. I'm thinking, I'm the elected prosecutor now of Allen County, Indiana. I'm sitting on the edge of nowhere, drinking tequila, and out come these weapons. I thought, you know what? Academic side be damned. These things come to a very personal level. You have to understand the most important thing is on your shoulders. Now, Randy, Robbie, Speedy would never have let anything happen. They were all safe. But the point is, out come firearms when we were sitting around drinking. We were all grown up. We all knew better. But there they were. The upside is nothing happened that night. We passed them around politely. I looked at him and said, that's great. Can we go on and do something else? But that made a difference to me because I realized the very situations that people can find themselves in and do find themselves in when they don't think, when they do the show and tell. And there we were. When I, as a prosecutor, I served 2 terms, 8 years as a prosecutor, I think one of the most difficult cases to make a decision on was self-defense. When did the person have a reasonable belief that he or she could act using deadly force? There used to be, I'm sure there still is, because as a defense attorney now for numerous years, I've seen it on the other side from prosecutors. It used to be a simple rule of thumb. 2 guys get into an argument, a fight, one pulls out a handgun, one is shot, the other isn't. How do you figure out what to do? The loser is in the hospital, the winner goes to jail. Because he used the gun. He fired the shot. Let's sort it out afterwards. But that was the mentality, and still is the mentality that does occur. You may have been justified in pulling that weapon. You may have been justified in using that weapon. But you have to know that when it first is trying to get settled out, the immediate response is, winner goes to jail. We'll sort it out afterwards. That is a very difficult type case, and I'm certain that we'll talk about that later this morning.